Hey guys, True Grit Scott BLUESAWS.com. I made a video, quick one last night, where I went over some of the muffler gasket stuff and just little odds and ends, getting the spark plug boot off. And I told you I was going to work on this saw, and I worked on this saw, and I'm done. You know, I did what I had to do, pulled the top off, everything else. So I actually started putting it back together, and I had the muffler on it when I realized I forgot to do my vacuum pressure test, leak down test. So stop what I'm doing, start cursing, pull off the muffler, you know, big 3 screws. Wasn't a big deal, but still, it's just an added step that I didn't have to do. And then I button it up for a pressure test, and I block off the intake and put the plug in and the plug in, and then I use my block off thing for this. A little hose coming out of it to hook up to it easier. Remembered to put my manifold intake boot ring in it so it would work fine. And I do a vacuum test first. I always start with a vacuum test, and I'm not going to say it's an old wives' tale, but I think that it's proper to do vacuum before pressure. If you had a little problem where the seal might not quite be right, pulls it in, I can't prove it to you guys, and somebody could argue it another way, but I always think that in a leak down test, vacuum is correct to do first. Do the vacuum test, passes. I pump it up and I leave it sitting for 5 minutes or so, and it doesn't move, needle doesn't budge a bit, and I could probably have left it for a half hour. So after that, I go to do the pressure test, and as I do the pressure test, I let it sit. And within the first minute or so, I pump up to just about 8 pounds so I could see if it comes down to 7. 7 pounds where you test at. So I go a little higher, not crazy high, just a little bit. And I see it slowly coming down to 7. Oh man, I got a leak somewhere. Frustrates the hell out of me, and it's a real slow leak. So I'm like, it's probably the spark plug or the decomp plug, one of those two. And I hit them with the wrench real quick, tighten them up a little bit, and I still have that slow leak. So now I'm frustrated because I got to grab the soapy water and spray the whole saw, which it's not the biggest deal, but it gets your bench all wet, and you got to blow off the saw because I don't like leaving that soapy water on the saw and all that. So it's better when it passes leak down without any soapy water. So anyhow, I get into it, and I spray the whole thing, and geez, I don't see it leaking anywhere, and I'm looking real hard, no big bubbles, because it's such a slow leak. You're going to get a fine foam, and you really got to watch. So finally, as I'm watching it, I see a big bubble down by the intake boot. I know what this is all about. So one of the things, and I think I mentioned it in another video recently, is when I put the cylinders on and when I put the manifold ring, intake boot ring, whatever you want to call it, on, a lot of times when they come from the factory, they're going to be on the bottom here. And that's fine, but the problem that I have, and it actually just saved my ass yesterday, is that you can't get a screwdriver onto it just to tighten it up if you need to. And this is a case in point. So I think I mentioned it last week or the week before, where it actually saved my ass, because I do these and I put, the screw portions here, I'll put it up like this, make sure I don't, extend it down into the base where it won't sit right. And I tighten it up like that because I could get, well, this isn't a screwdriver, it's a T27. I could get in there and on it and tighten it up just that little bit that it needs to seal it. So I think it was one full turn on the Phillips head, sealed it up for me. Yeah, it's a 372 with a 44 intake boot on it and a random ring I found. I was just grabbing parts that I had laying around to show you guys what I was talking about with that. I think I was clear on that. Point it up is what I'm saying, so you could get on it with a screwdriver. So that saved my ass, and then we passed pressure test. So I thought it was interesting that I just talked about it, and it actually wound up saving me. I think that was the only thing I had today. I guess I'm in for a couple snowstorms. It was 12 degrees this morning and kind of miserable. We're up to 27, and I almost wish it stayed 12 if it was going to snow, because, if it's that cold, chances are that snow would be nice and dry and airy, and I could use the backpack blower and blow it away real easy. So we're probably, at 27 degrees, we're probably in for a wet mess. We'll see what happens. So next 2 days will be snowy. Guess that was it. I just want to talk about that, and I don't know. It should still be buttoned up. I guess I could. One of the other things I'll tell you, before I did this pressure test right here, what I generally do is I'll kink the hose and make sure I don't have a leak, at the end of the pressure tester where the hoses join or anything like that. And I'll do that often. Where are we at? We're at 7 and, I don't know, a third. I don't think we're going to move. So that's always good to test that. And then when you do have a leak, you could kind of rule that out. I mean, granted, you could spray it with soapy water, but I don't know how much of a mess you guys want to make with soapy water. We're still at 7 and a quarter. Wonder if you could hear this. The other thing I'll tell you guys when you're doing leak downs is I often walk away from the saw for 15, 20 minutes and they'll hold pressure. Not always, but a lot of them will hold for 20 minutes, a half hour. I've had them hold for, 3, 4 hours before, which is kind of nice. The point I'm trying to make is that don't just pump it up, look at it for 10 seconds and say, oh, that's not moving. It may take 30 seconds or a minute before you notice it. And I think the rule according to the two-stroke handbook is that you cannot lose more than a pound within, I'm going to say 2 minutes. And then if you can't lose another pound for another, I'm going to say 2 minutes. There's a time on it and it's not that long. And chances are once you go from 7 to 6, a lot of times I've even seen leaks stop at 5 pounds. Like it'll hold 4 pounds, 4.5 pounds, and it'll hold there. But it's that drop from 7 to 4 that's the problem. And if it does it in under, if it did it over the course of a half hour, I don't care. Do you know what I mean? 7 to 6. But over the course of a minute or two, that's a problem. So don't just pump it up, look at the needle for 30 seconds, say, oh, I'm good. Let it sit for a minute or two. And then if it did go down, then really look at it. Come back and sit and stare at the thing for what it's worth. Anyhow, guys, I think that's all I wanted to talk about is that intake boot, and I saved my own ass with one of my own good ideas. Anyhow, guys, thought I had something else, but I'm running around and I got a bunch of more orders to ship out today. So this was me being irresponsible and taking a break to make a video. Anyhow, guys, True Grit Scott Bulletproof Saws and BLUESAWS.com. Thanks for watching and stay safe.